Africa is one of the fastest growing consumer markets in the world and is expected to boast 1.7 billion shoppers by 2030. And so shopping extravaganzas like Black Friday offer unique insights into this evolving consumer market. So this is Insights from Africa. I'm Bronwyn Seaborn, and on this episode, we ring up some experts and bag key insights into consumer trends. Known for generating long queues outside shops and frenzied midnight buying online, Black Friday is no longer just a shopping event that happens post-Thanksgiving in the US. It's a phenomenon that has gripped the globe, and in South Africa specifically, it's an event that has grown and evolved tremendously over the past decade. So let's delve into the detail. And for that, I'm joined by Tumelo Ramagondo, who heads up the credit card division at Standard Bank South Africa. Tumelo, thanks so much for your time today. So set the scene for us. Black Friday over the past decade, how has it evolved?
Yeah, I think we've come a long way. If you think back to when Black Friday was actually first introduced, probably would take a lot sort of taking the lead in terms of trying to introduce some deals and discounts to customers, to the days where I think we really started seeing traction when the brick and mortar stores started picking it up, and the likes of Game starting to introduce those midnight deals where you saw big rushes. People not sleeping, waiting for those nice deals to come through. And I think from there, we sort of saw a big increase on people sort of seeing Black Friday as potentially the day that they go to get a bit of value on items that they need. And in those days, or in the early days, we saw items like your luxury items, electronics potentially being items that people were sort of looking for in those days. But I think COVID sort of came and disturbed that trend a little bit. Retailers then sort of had to start thinking about how do they actually allow consumers to still benefit from Black Friday, but not having too much of them in the malls, given the fact that we were all worried about COVID. And I think that's when we started seeing the rise of online shopping, and also Black Friday potentially becoming more of I'm going to call it a Black November, where the retailers really started running deals throughout the November month, as opposed to just focusing on that day. But I think post-COVID, we can actually see that consumers are taking back to the stores, looking for those deals again. The retailers have sort of stuck to having the deals sort of spread out throughout November, so you do see quite a bit of spend coming through in that month. But I think the most important piece is you still see that online component continuing to grow from the days of COVID. So a lot, I think, has actually changed, and this day has actually evolved in many different ways to what we see today.
Does that evolution also speak to taking an overseas concept and making it South African and making it work for the South African consumer?
No, I think so. I mean, the reality is, I think what is really common is there's discounts available. And I think we're all sort of looking for those discounts and bargains when it comes to certain items that we need. But you sort of had to give it a South African flavor, given that our consumers would actually be looking for certain specific items, and therefore you sort of need to sort of cater for that context.
Let's take a look now at Black Friday 2024 and some of the trends that perhaps emerged. I want to look, I know you did raise it, this online versus bricks and mortar.
Yes.
Give us more insight into that.
Yeah.
Are we seeing it be equal? Or are we seeing a shift that online's coming up a little bit more, even as people return after COVID and come more into the stores?
Yeah.
How are we seeing people shop, essentially?
Yeah.
Are we shopping more online? Are we shopping more in bricks and mortar? Are we just shopping more, no matter what?
Yes. So I think that the first point is just shopping more in general. That's really what we see. I mean, if we look at our Black Friday, I mean, our volumes increased by almost 10%. Compared to Black Friday or the Black Friday weekend of last year. So you can definitely see that consumers actually going out there shopping a lot more. But I think bricks and mortar will always remain, or at least in the short to medium term, sort of the biggest channel that consumers are shopping from. We do see that about 13% of our total sort of spend was on online, which is almost an 8% increase from what we saw around the same time last year. So consumers are going to online, and they are increasing their sort of preferences of using online as a potential place to shop. But I think in terms of numbers, the majority of customers are still shopping in the brick and mortar sort of space. And we see that I think both trends on both brick and mortar and online continues to grow.
From what we're buying, has there been a shift there? Because a lot of conversations around Black Friday are less about, oh, I really want that new TV, to,
Yes.
oh, I'm really hoping for a good deal on toilet paper. Did you see that come through in the numbers?
Yeah, so we definitely see that come through. And I must say this trend probably started about 3 years ago. I mean, the reality is, from a South African perspective, consumers have been sort of under some severe strain given sort of the elevated levels of interest rate we've seen, as well as, I guess, inflation. And I think that does impact the consumers' sort of disposable income that they have. And I think at the back of that, you can definitely see that there's been a shift more away from luxury goods during this time towards more groceries. So if you look at our numbers, for example, for this Black Friday, groceries constituted for about 29% of all spend for Black Friday, which sort of shows you that it still remains something that consumers are really out there looking for. But I think what was also an interesting trend this year was we actually saw probably the biggest increase in any of the categories being around retail clothing. So almost 25% increase on retail clothing compared to last year this time in terms of shopping. So whether that means there were more deals that, better deals that the retail clothing sort of stores were offering, or people just needed a lot more, Christmas shopping and all those other stuff, you can definitely see that those two categories actually almost makes up 40% of total Black Friday spend.
So a specific focus there on basics, but almost on the flip side, in terms of people spending on experiences, being travel, etc., things like that.
Yeah.
I know that was a highlight last year in Black Friday, a lot of spend going towards that. Did you see that carry through to this year?
Yeah, so we definitely see that come through. That trend continues to happen. I think you can almost say since COVID, you can definitely see travel accommodation sort of being one of the sort of fastest growing sort of categories. We do see that also come through this year. Actually, you mentioned that the highest transaction we saw during Black Friday actually came from bookings.com, which was like a value of about 759,000 in terms of spend from one consumer, obviously. So you do definitely see travel come up. The cruises, for example, was one of the biggest increases, for example, in average transactions that we've seen during this period as well. So you can definitely see that consumers are looking for better deals around travel and experiences during this time as well.
There's a lot of emphasis placed on Black Friday and Black November,
Yes.
now to a certain degree as the event has evolved. In days gone by, there was always this very large focus on December, festive shopping, etc.
Yes.
Has the Black November, Black Friday shopping experience taken away from transactions that happen in the December period? Or are we still just seeing a very nice steady increase from consumers, be it in November or be it in December?
Yeah, so I'll say from a Standard Bank perspective, if you look at our consumer data, Black Friday has definitely become the biggest spending sort of, let's call it, event in the country. However, it's, I would say, December, especially that sort of Christmas Eve weekend, is potentially a close second. So December still remains a very big spending month on its own. Probably, if you're just looking at the month overall, maybe our biggest spending month. But in terms of the sort of days, Black Friday still remains quite high. I think a lot of what you do see, though, is there are customers that use Black Friday to do some of their Christmas sort of shopping. But we do still see, I think, significant levels of activities come Christmas time, especially that sort of Christmas Eve weekend.
So does January remain January then?
Yes.
As everyone perhaps then leans on credit during January to kind of get through after the spending frenzies perhaps of November and December?
Yes. I think January is real and is a concern that I think our consumers really need to be thinking about. You've got quite a lot of things I think that plays into it. One, most people tend to get paid a bit earlier than usual, which sort of makes the time that you need to get that money to sort of last a bit longer. Secondly, obviously, all the festivities people tends to spend around that also sort of drains your disposable cash, obviously, and that then sort of leaves consumers a bit strained come January. Then you must be worrying about school fees, uniforms, and other things.
All the boring things.
Yeah, the important things though. So I think as a result, from a bank perspective, we always sort of say to our consumers, they really need to be vigilant around how they spend. Make sure that you really spend on the things that you need. Make sure that you do have a budget that you put in place, because come January, there's real life things that you need to deal, and you shouldn't really necessarily compromise yourself. So it's quite important that you put together a budget for yourself and try and stick to the budget.
Almost a budget the whole year you can save for Black Friday, and just how you're going to get through November, December and January, right?
No, definitely, definitely. I think the thing is, we tend to feel the pain in January, right? That's really where I think the biggest pain is felt. So it's quite important, especially during this period, from Black Friday all the way to then, to say, have a budget, try and stick to your budget. If you really need to buy something outside of your budget, really make sure that it's something that you really need and it's an essential, as opposed to luxury.
Not a 65-inch TV then.
Yes.
Well, on that
Definitely.
note, Tumelo, let's leave it there. Thanks so much for your time today.
No, thanks a lot, and thanks for having me.
Tumelo Ramugondo is the head of credit card at Standard Bank South Africa. We're hitting pause for just a moment now as we head into a break, but you're going to want to stay tuned, because after the break, I speak to the retailer that introduced Black Friday to South Africa, so stay tuned.